Pilots for what?
What?
Exactly. Welcome to the 27th episode of Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say. And today we do have Sam. Sam, I'm going to have you introduce yourself briefly in just a second. But just in case you guys are a new viewer, my name is Zach. I'm here every week. And we talk about anything that is aviation related, especially around pilots. That's the goal. And today we'll talk a little bit about things that have a lot more to do with airline pilots. We want to really get a little insight, maybe day in the life of, maybe a little bit about what's worth what. And kind of have his viewpoint on his experience so far going through training and everything. But we'll get to all of that. For now, if you don't mind, would you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah. So my name's Sam Shepard. I'm a 737 First Officer for Delta Airlines based out of LAX. It's coming up on a year at Delta next week. I'll officially be there for a year, which is an exciting milestone in my airline career. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, towards Cape Cod with my mom, my dad, my little sister.
Nice.
Went to college out in Northern California at Chico State, where I graduated with a business degree. Did 2 years of junior college first, then 2 years out there.
Okay.
And then I kind of got my aviation career, per se, started when I was a junior in college. I was an intern at San Francisco International Airport for airfield ops. So I did that, drove around the truck at the airport, did runway inspections, etc. But it was always my dream to be a airline pilot.
You did know that.
Yeah. Yep. But I needed to save money and get myself in a position to do that. So I used my business degree after graduating college, where I sold airplanes for a couple different companies in Southern California. I did that for about 3 years, and then I decided to come down. That's when I decided to move to Texas and come to flight school here at Thrust Flight. In January 2020 is when I moved here, and I was a full-time ZTA student. Did that. Took me about 7 or 8 months to finish the program from instrument to MEI.
You said about how many months did you say?
I think, let's see, I finished.
I know it's rough, probably.
Yeah, I finished. So I started in January, and then I finished my MEI. I think it was August 20th is when I took that check ride. So
Nice.
8 months.
Yeah.
To get all those ratings, and then I was a flight instructor here for a while, and then my first quote unquote airline job was I flew for Cape Air. I was based in Boston and then Montana. That was like a scheduled 135 operations, where I flew 400 series Cessnas, which had about 8 to 10 people on them, and little short hops, about 2 hours is like the max flight. And I flew locally here for American Eagle or Envoy. I based both in Chicago and Dallas, and then did that for about 14 months, and then applied and got hired at Delta, and that's where I've been since October of 2023. So coming up on a year on that. So that's
congratulations on
that.
Nice.
That's pretty much my professional career.
That's a good rundown.
Yeah,
I mean,
in a nutshell.
I feel like I got a lot of good bullet points there.
Yeah. But I honestly wouldn't really be where I am today if I didn't make that decision to move and come to Thrust Flight, and that was a big deal. I
mean, I can imagine. It sounds like you moved states just for it.
Yeah. Like I was. Let's see, how old was I? I think I was 25. Yeah, 25. I was either 25 or 26. Selling airplanes in Santa Monica, living with my best friends from college. It was a great time, and the stars kind of aligned. I was doing a lot of thinking about it, and I literally came home from work one day, and I told my best friend, I said, "Hey man, I'm moving to Texas to go to flight school. This is what I want to do my whole life, and I'm finally in a position to do it." And that's what I did, and my life forever changed from that. Not only did I live out my dream and become an airline pilot and have a lot of fun doing it and meeting a lot of great people here, but during that same time, I also met my wife when I was in flight school here. So there was a lot of major changes, and I owe it all to making that decision to come to Thrust Flight. So it's been a pretty amazing place for me.
It's funny because just for maybe for the viewers, I'll say this then. I didn't even ask you just because you came here to Thrust Flight. I remember talking to Nick about it, and I know Nick reached out to you. And, I actually forgot that you had said that you did come to thrust flight. I remember you spoke one time at the ZTA,
Yep.
but that works out so well that you can like actually speak to that.
Yeah.
It's really cool to
Yeah,
have you on
it's
here.
you know, I met lifelong, you know, friends here and role models and mentors with
Hmm.
you know, Patrick and Bill Peterson. You know, they really helped me in my career, and you know, I strive to be as successful as they are one day, and
Yeah.
they're just absolutely awesome people. And
Yeah.
even some of the people I used to flight instruct with, some of my former students, you know, I love seeing where they are today and how
Yeah.
they're progressing through their career, and I still keep in touch with them,
Yeah.
you know, pretty regularly. It's really is a family environment here,
Hmm.
and you know, I can't speak to other flight schools, but you know, I couldn't imagine doing it anywhere else.
Yeah,
So
well, I'm glad we got to have you. I'm glad that we get to have you back again.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's cool to
absolutely.
hear your journey go all the way from like you were saying, you went to school. You did go to school, and
Yeah, I
then you
went to
continued.
college.
Yeah, and
Yep, yep.
you sold planes and things like that, and you made
Yeah.
a couple of moves around the country. It sounds like
Yeah, yeah.
it was like
So
4 or 5 moves, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
kind of all over the map. But yeah,
Yeah.
so when I was 19, moved to Northern California, did
Uh-huh.
2 years of junior college there, and then 2 years at Chico State, which is about 2 hours north of Sacramento. So it's
Mhm.
right on the top of the valley there.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing experience. Kind of like coming to thrust flight. I wouldn't change that for the world.
Mm.
There's kind of three big things that I've done in my life. One was moving to California, two was going to Chico State, and three was coming to thrust flight. Without
Okay.
those three things, I wouldn't be where I am today. And going to Chico is great college experience. Met my best friends who I still keep in touch with daily
Yeah.
here, and you know, that really helped me shape who I am today. And
Yeah.
then, you know, they were all supportive of me, you know,
Awesome,
moving
man.
away and coming to thrust flight and, you know, doing it. And my best friend wasn't too happy when I was like, "Yeah, I'm
You're like,
out of
I'm
here."
leaving. I'm
Yeah,
dipping. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
going out of
he
here.
got over it.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
he's,
So,
he gets it now,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, it's cool. It sounds so. I would say maybe like Dallas, Boston, and California.
Yep,
Somewhere in California is gonna be your like home bases, right? I mean, you're
yep,
based out of LA, but you
yeah.
live in Dallas.
Correct. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
I'm a commuter. So kind of how that works is I start and end every trip in LA.
Okay.
So once a month, or the previous month, we bid for a schedule. So I kind of bid for schedules that are a little
Mhm.
bit more commutable. So
Mhm.
what does that mean? That
Yeah.
means like it gives me enough time to show up at the airport, try to be like 2 hours before my sign in. That's like basically like when we punch in to go to work, you
Mhm.
just do it on our phone. And then on the back end as well, like finish a trip with enough time for me to catch an airplane to go back to Dallas.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons I picked LA was kind of going back to that Chico State thing.
Mm.
I have all my, you know, my friends that still live in Southern California that I literally just stay at their house. Like if
Yeah.
I get a trip that's not commutable. So, and
Mhm.
especially there comes a time when you're so junior, you're going to be on what's called reserve, where you're basically on standby. You're waiting for crew
Mm.
schedule to call you for a trip, and a lot of times, you know, you're just kind of sitting around waiting for that call.
Right.
So if you don't live there, like I don't,
And
you
that's
know,
not.
I would just stay at my friend's house who live on the beach. So it's not the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
Not the worst. So that was one of the main driving factors of why I picked LA.
Mhm.
And LA is also a little bit more of a junior base,
Yeah.
so that means you can kind of build your seniority a little bit quicker and get a better
Oh.
schedule. Whereas probably in the future, in you know, a year or so, when I have a little bit better seniority
Mhm.
within the company, I'll probably switch to Atlanta, just because it's a little shorter of a commute.
Mhm.
And it's actually a bigger base. LA is a pretty small base on the 737. We have about a
Okay.
hundred pilots, so about 100 captains on the 7-3, and about 90 FOs on it. There's a few other airplanes, but just specifically for my airplane, it's a rather small base. Whereas Atlanta is really big. They
Yeah.
have about 400 to 500 captains and FOs just on the 7-3, so it's about four
Wow.
times the
Yeah, I
size.
was gonna say that's like 4 times the size, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, then, I mean, it sounds like you have some options there, but it
Hmm.
sounds like you were like strategizing as it sounds like you have the whole time,
Yeah,
really. But
yeah.
you said maybe we'll base ourselves in LA,
Yep,
even though did you stay in Dallas because well, first of all, you made a home here, but then you have
yep.
your significant other
Yeah,
and
my
things like that,
wife,
right?
my wife's here, and
Hmm.
you know, we met 2 weeks into me moving, joining Thrust Flight. So she's kind of seen me through as a student all the way
No.
to where am now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my wife works here, has a really good job. Her
Mm-hmm.
family lives just north of DFW. So I've been here 4 years. I love Dallas.
Okay.
I'm kind of a Texas guy now.
Everyone becomes one.
But who knows what the future holds? If I told you, 4 years ago I'd be flying for Delta Airlines, you would have thought I was crazy. So I can't predict the future.
Yeah.
But as for right now, we're super happy in Dallas. I just bought a house last year, so
Nice.
we're kind of pretty settled in. And to be honest with you, and I'm sure other pilots can speak to this, but you kind of get in a routine, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of just you're just so used to it after a while, and
It's part of the
I
job.
don't, but yeah, I don't want to break that. So
Yeah.
and I love LA. It's a great base, great people to fly with. So
Yeah.
and they have good trips and stuff.
Yeah.
So I really like it.
Yeah, that sounds nice. That's and we talked to Captain Phillip
Yep.
recently,
Hmm.
and he's not a commuter.
Uh-huh.
And he's what it was American Airlines. He was
Yep.
flying with them
Yep.
for a long time, and
Right.
so it was really interesting to hear kind of how his day went.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, you've kind of shared that just now a little bit. You'll get there like 2 hours before you have to actually punch in,
Yep.
and then of course continue your day. And if you're on standby, you have
Yeah, it
friends
could
and
be a long
beaches.
day as a
Yeah,
commuter for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, similar. I watched that same podcast. My
Hmm.
typical day for going to work is just like him. I drive to the employee parking lot at DFW. I get on the bus,
Hmm.
and then I get to the terminal. And depending on what flight I'm going to take, so one of the cool things as an airline pilot, we have kind of reciprocal agreements with every airline, so we can jump seat on each other. So a lot of times I actually take American out to LA or Spirit or whatever. So
Oh.
I just kind of look, hey, what are what are my flight options for the day? And a lot of time it's not Delta. Like a lot of times it's Spirit or Frontier or American that I
Hmm.
take out to LA. That gives me, enough time in case there's a delay or whatever.
Hmm.
And in once I get to LA, like I like to get there a little early, sometimes even earlier. So we have like a pilot, we call it ops, where there's like a lounge with nice, lazy boy chairs and a bunch of TVs, and there's a little cafeteria in there and a bunch of computers where you and even sleep rooms too. So you go take a
Oh, that's
nap
nice. I would take
before, and they
naps.
actually have like a whole gym in there and stuff.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
a lot of times I'll commute in like 4 hours early and just go work out in the gym or take a nap. That way it kind of takes away the stress of, hey, am I gonna get there on
Waiting around.
time? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much my day. And then, I sign in once I get to LA, and an hour before the flight,
Mhm.
we get our flight plan. So on our it's all on our
You don't get it
iPads
until
now.
like an hour
Yeah,
before, right?
hour before the flight. If it's an international flight, it's 2 hours before. But
Mhm.
so I'll take a look at that. I'll take a look at the flight plan, the weather, flight time, what's the turbulence going to be like, and then figure out what gate I'm going to. And a lot of times, if I see the other guy in ops, or if I've flown with them before, that's another cool thing about LA. We're a small base,
Mm.
so you may fly with the same person more than once, which is kind of rare. There's 17,000 pilots at Delta, so to fly with the same guy
You're
twice
right.
is kind of rare. But sometimes you do.
Like you said, the LA base though is like
Yeah,
what
it's small.
100
Yeah, it's
pilots
it's
and maybe a
small,
90.
laid
Yeah.
back, which I like.
Okay.
So, but if not, I'll normally meet the pilot at the gate or at the airplane, and same with the flight attendants. Introduce myself and kind of get into my pre-flight routine, whether it be the doing the walk around, making sure the water and waste is all
Mhm.
done in there, and check if there's anything broken on the airplane, MEL, or anything I need to kind of dig deeper into books on.
Mhm.
And then meet the captain, and kind of just like we're kind of doing now, just kind of introduce ourselves,
Oh, okay, cool.
tell them where we're from. If I haven't been to where we're going, I normally ask about the overnight, how's the hotel, what's there to do around.
Yeah. Oh, okay,
And then we
cool.
kind of decide, who's going to fly this leg and who's going to do the radios. Normally the captain always does the first one.
Mhm.
But that's not true all the time. And
Mhm.
then yeah, go from there. Normally a typical day one is normally a max of 2 flights.
Mhm.
Out of LA, we normally fly from LA to somewhere on the East Coast, whether it be Atlanta, Miami, somewhere down there, and then one normal short one.
Mhm.
That's not all the time, but that's a typical first day.
Yeah.
Then we get to the hotel, and then I'm normally pretty tired by the
Yeah.
time because I've commuted in day of and stuff like that. So I'm normally pretty
Oh,
tired.
because you've already taken a commute
Yeah,
there too.
yeah,
Okay,
right,
yeah.
right. So that cool part about being an airline pilot, right, is like you can live anywhere you want to live, but
Uh-huh.
sometimes there's a price to pay with that,
Exactly.
with the commute. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's pretty much a typical day, and then it trips anywhere from 3 days to 5 days,
Mhm.
and that all comes back to the bidding of your schedule, and then
Mm.
how you want to do it based on your seniority. But yeah, pretty much 3 to 5 days are our typical trip, and anywhere from one flight a day to I've seen as many. The most I've ever done in one day is four.
Yeah. I'm
Uh,
sure that was a long day.
yeah, they're normally like kind of short flights, like
Oh,
out
when you
of
squeeze in that many. Okay.
yeah, it's normally like out of Atlanta, like we're going like Atlanta to Pensacola, Florida, and back, and or there to Nashville. They're
Okay.
normally pretty short. But
That's nice
normally,
though.
yeah, for a 3 day trip, normally if I'm gonna bid and I'm getting really in the weeds here, but if I'm
I
gonna
understand.
bid a if I'm gonna bid a 3 day trip, I like to do ones that pay at least 18 hours. And
Yeah.
normally, in order to earn that 18 hours, you're gonna have one day where it's like 4 legs a day.
I mean, that's how it works, right? I
Yeah,
remember.
you gotta earn it.
Yeah,
But
I remember trying to. I remember, and this is not the same thing, but
yeah,
when you're like, oh, if I'm gonna get the most for my time, right? Because
uh-huh.
you're taking trips out and you only get to actually work a certain number of hours.
Hmm.
I remember just like, for example, serving. I used to work mostly the weekends, but I would
Yeah,
pick up as many shifts as I could and tables as I could on the weekend
right.
because I figured if I'm gonna be here, if I'm gonna work as hard
Yeah,
as I am
might as
going
well
to
make the
get as
most amount of
many
money.
tables
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I'd work three doubles on a weekend. I'd work Friday, Saturday, Sunday doubles and I'd get the most for my time.
Yeah, it's kind
And
of like the same deal with
yeah,
the
now
three
it's
day
hard
trips.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I'm not a pilot. I'm not
yeah,
flying like you said, like 4 trips in a day or anything
yeah,
like that. But I understand the idea of getting the most for your money.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like a little bit of strategy.
Yeah, like I'm
Yeah,
I'm the same
yeah.
way. Like if I'm gonna be at work, whether it be any job I ever had,
Hmm.
when I get there, I'm gonna give it my all and try to make the most amount of money as
Yeah.
possible. So
Absolutely, that's cool. Well, it's good to hear the insight because I really didn't understand the different workflows and how that kind of stuff to work. And
yeah,
like it was really interesting to hear that you are away for about 3 to 5 days at a time
yep.
ish. And I know that like could vary, and you're working on your seniority and things like that.
Hmm.
Did you do any of the cadet programs or anything?
No, I didn't do any cadet
I don't know if we had
programs.
that set up yet.
Yeah, I think we did. Some of the students that I was in when I was in ZTA
Mm-hmm.
did sign up for that. I just didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really want to be locked into
Mm-hmm.
any specific airline kind of deal because
Mm-hmm.
when I was going through flight school, it was the middle of COVID, right?
Oh
So there was
wow.
no hiring in sight. It was doom and gloom. Like it was bad. But like Patrick and like Bill and all these very experienced people that have seen the ups and downs of the airline industry,
Mm-hmm.
they knew it was gonna come back. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to give myself as many options as possible.
Yeah.
So I just didn't do the cadet program, and one I was just kind of so focused on getting my hours and flying. I think when they had the cadet interview thing, I think I remember the day I was like trying to do 2 lessons in one day. And
Yeah,
I was
you're like
just,
just trying
or
to
I
work.
had like a check ride coming up, and I'm like, I don't have time to focus on that. I need to
Yeah.
focus on the books. I think that was really like the main reason was
You're like staying really
yeah,
present.
I
Yeah.
think I had a check ride coming or something coming up, and I'm like, I was like just so focused on what I was doing.
I get
So
like that. I'm like, look, man, I'll worry about it. I'll cross that bridge
yeah,
when I get there.
exactly. Yeah, I was just focused on that one thing at that one
Mhm.
time. But yeah.
Well, that's something too. Like some people, and I don't know how many people are actually concerned about these things, but
Hmm.
it seems like there's room to be worried about like, oh, hiring is not as quick as it was before, or it's going up and down. I mean, is there a reason? I mean, you just said it kind of right, but in my mind, what would you say to someone who's worried about whether or not they're going to be able to get to work at the airlines when they
Um,
when they get their
I
license?
mean, the hiring. I mean, we're projected. I mean, just at Delta alone, we still are retiring 400 to 500 pilots every year for the next, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really think there's going to be this giant, huge wave of hiring like we just saw, but they're still going to hire at least 1,000, and that's for retirements and growth, right?
Yeah.
So that's still a ton of pilots, and then you multiply that by all the major
For
airlines.
airlines,
That's
yeah,
5,000,
at least.
people. And I don't even know if that's a solid. It could possibly be more than that, but that's what I think at the minimum
Yeah.
they're gonna have to do, because there's a lot of, these airlines have a huge order of airplanes, so it's more of
Mm,
an airplane
mm,
shortage problem right now. They bought all these airplanes for growth, and they just haven't taken delivery of them. But once they do start taking delivery of them, which I
mhm,
think we should see in like Q2 2025,
mhm.
that the hiring is going to
Because we
pick
got to
back
fill
up.
those planes. We need pilots for the
Yeah,
planes.
yeah, and
Even.
they
Yeah.
still we still are hiring. We're still
Even
hiring. We're
now.
still interviewing
Yeah.
pilots. But I think just like when you're a flight student,
Yeah.
you really kind of have your nose to the grindstone. You're trying to get through all these ratings as quickly as possible. And one of the quickest ways I think you can get hired at, a major airline, a regional airline, is you gotta network.
Yeah.
You gotta go out there and go to
Mm,
these hiring events.
mm,
They actually have one coming up in Fort Worth, I think next week. It's RTAG. I can't remember exactly what it stands for. It's a military one, but anybody can go to these things.
okay.
They cost about, I think it's like $100 or roughly, and you go. They're normally like 2 to 3 days, and every single airline's going to be there. Everybody.
What do they have? Like they have like a recruiter on their
Yeah,
behalf or something? Okay.
pilot recruiters. They're going to have people that can look at your resume, interview prep, all kinds of
Mm.
stuff. So
Giving you the rundown on how to start your career.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I went to a few of these.
Mm.
And before I went to these conferences,
Yeah.
I had them look at my resume. I did one-on-one coaching with them on how to, present yourself, how do you make yourself more marketable,
Yeah.
because there's no such thing as a second first impression. When you
Yeah.
get up there and you have your little time slot, you're talking to them, and you say, "Hey, I'm Sam." They got your resume in front of you,
That's,
and you have your 7 minutes or whatever with them
yeah.
to basically break down your whole career, and say how you're going to be a good fit for XYZ airline.
Wow.
And even if you're just a flight instructor, you don't even have your hours yet, like you're right at 1,000, 1,200, and you're trying to get hired on with the regional. All those regionals are there, and
Mm.
if you make a good impression on them, they're going to remember.
Yeah.
And I did that. I go to Oshkosh every year, which is this big airplane festival thing in
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Sounds
And
awesome.
I was at Cape Air at the time, and I was looking to make the jump to the regionals,
Okay.
because I was coming right up on my 1,500 hours. And at Oshkosh, they have like a career center where it's all these airlines in there. And I remember I met their recruiter Austin,
Mm.
and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna have 1,500 hours in 2 months."
Yeah.
And I brought a copy of my resume and I handed it to him, and we kind of hit it off and talked.
Mm.
And then right when I hit my submission button to my application, I shot Austin an email. I said, "Hey, Austin, Sam from Oshkosh just submitted my application," and I'm not joking. Within 10 minutes, I got a phone call back.
Man. Dude,
And
I
it's
want to give you
because,
one just because
yeah,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
but that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. If you
Yeah.
don't, go out and try to do those things, you're just going to be in a big stack
Yeah.
of resumes.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of put that extra effort into, going out and meeting these recruiters and stuff, because that's how
That
you're
goes
going
for
to get
any
hot.
profession, it
Yeah.
sounds like,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
especially
So,
here in this scenario, it's a lot more. Correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like
yep.
it's a big community,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Regardless. So
Yeah, it's big, but it's small at the same
yeah.
time. And the same thing with Delta. I went to it's called Asian Pilots of America.
Mhm.
There's this conference in Vegas. I think they had it in Vegas last year too.
Mm.
Similar thing. I met with the Delta recruiter, and literally the next day, I got an email back from Delta saying, "Hey, with Delta, you have to take some like brain game things and do
Yeah.
kind of a personality test before you actually interview." But that literally the next day after I went to that conference, I got the email.
Man,
So otherwise you would
so
just be
cool.
waiting in a
Yeah.
stack. So I cannot stress that enough to people.
Yeah.
If you're like, "Oh, I'm kind of my application isn't getting pulled,"
Right.
you gotta go out to these conferences. That is like the best way to really, really get the ball rolling. And even if it doesn't happen, like they don't get the call right away after the first one,
Yeah.
go to the next one because they keep tabs of all how many times Sam's been to this conference and how many times we talked
Oh,
on your application. So, or in your application
they see that
portal.
you're active and really
Yes,
serious.
yeah,
Yeah.
they see that you're committed. Like I really want to be at this airline, so
Yeah.
they pay attention to that. So I know hiring's a little slow right now, but you know, put that work in now
Hmm.
because it's going to pay off in 3 or 4 months,
Yeah.
or even sooner. But that's my biggest advice to people that are trying to get hired right now. That's what I would be doing, and just keep grinding on getting hours, whether it be continue to flight instruct, or do other ways of trying to accumulate hours. I did some tours out of the
Right.
Redbird Airport, at a
Okay.
little restaurant over there that had some airplanes, and
Yeah.
then same thing, just even hanging out at the FBO here and trying to meet somebody. You never know who you're gonna meet, and you might say, "Hey, I just want you to sit right seat in my airplane."
It sounds like you have to be pretty focused on the goal to even be
Yeah,
thinking that way though.
definitely,
Because in your
definitely.
goal you were clear. I mean, you said you were like 25 when you finally made the decision, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken,
Uh
to
huh.
come to flight school.
Yeah.
And so but you kind of always knew you wanted to do it. And there's a few questions I have around that, but what I'm
Sure.
getting at is you're saying you kind of knew what you want to do, and when you
Hmm.
decided to do it, you were that much more sure about what you wanted to do, and
Yep.
you made decisions like that to hang out somewhere, go get your hours, go to the networking events.
Yep.
So I think that's and the fact that you moved states a couple of times. So I
Hmm.
mean, uh, yeah, to me, I just wanted to highlight that it sounds like you have to be pretty goal driven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and for the most part, pilots are very goal driven.
Mm,
I think they have to be, right. Like,
right.
there's just so much you have to know and study, and you got to take all these check rides. Like, so if
Mm-hmm.
you're not goal driven, you know, I don't know if being a pilot is necessarily it, but
Yeah.
just like you were in flight school, like have your eyes on the prize, and it's the same thing
Mm,
when it comes to get hiring at any one of these companies.
yeah.
Just work really hard and treat that um, hiring conference like a check ride.
Yeah.
Treat it like a check ride, and be as prepared as you possibly can for it, because that's going to be your time to shine, and trust me, it will pay off in the end.
Hmm. And like you said earlier, I can't speak to other flight schools. I just really like how what you're saying about how you're even just maneuvering, going after what you want,
Hmm.
and getting the jobs that you think are best for you or whatever it
Yep.
might be. I like how that still reflects to like you said, the check ride.
Yep.
I hear the students and the CFIs here talk so much about how engaged you are when you're here in this program,
Hmm.
and I'm always been so curious. I've been a part of a lot of different organizations that like they struggle to find that group drive
Yeah.
like I hear here. And so I'm just wondering, is that you? I'm wondering if that's a pilot thing or a thrust light thing or both, but
I
it's
think
so
it's a
cool.
little bit of both. I
Yeah.
think one of the going back to some of the amazing people I've
Hmm.
met here at Thrustlight, like Patrick. I've known him since I was a student here. I did my instrument check ride with him, and I've
Hmm.
I've seen the success of this place,
Hmm.
like the tremendous growth, and
Yeah.
he got that from being a like a goal driven person, like
Yes.
putting his nose to the
He's
grindstone
that
and
way.
doing everything possible to be successful. So I kind of like got that vibe off him and kind of emulate that.
Hmm.
And then one of my other big mentors here are Bill Peterson, who
Hmm.
taught a lot in the CFI course, and I'd kind of talk to him and say, hey, what do you think about doing this? And he kind of really pushed me to go out and do these interviews and apply
Yeah.
early. And so
That's
I
cool.
kind of owe a little bit to them, who I've met here at Trustlight, and then a lot of it myself too,
Yeah.
really wanting it. But use all your mentors that you possibly can, whether it be your flight instructor here, a DPE,
Hmm.
or somebody that's gone through the program and has done it. Like, don't be afraid to reach out to them and say, hey, what would you do?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing this, because a lot of times two brains are better than one, and they
Yeah.
they can they can kind of push you over the edge.
That's cool. I think we'll probably reach out to Bill as well.
Yeah.
I heard Bill's name here and there, and then Hunter
Yeah,
mentioned maybe
awesome,
reaching out to
awesome
him.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be reaching out to Bill if Bill sees this. Then hey, we're calling you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's so many things I want to go into, but I feel like I'd be here all day to be honest.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
almost yeah, I'll circle back to some of that, but one thing I did want to ask is, because the goal here for me,
Mhm.
anyways, is hey, there might be just whoever watches this, I want them to understand people's experiences as it's happening now, right?
Yep.
Whether it be yours, whether it be Bill's, or whether it
Mhm.
be who did we just talk to? I'm sorry, Philip, whether it be
Yeah.
Phillips. I want people to understand there's a lot of different experiences,
Mhm.
and then all you guys made it to where you're at, and whichever way you did.
Yep.
And I know for you, you were a student here.
Yeah.
Were you concerned? And you can answer however is comfortable for you. But were you concerned at all about like how much it costs to become a pilot and things like that? I mean, was any of that on your brain? Like, man, this sounds like not attainable or expensive, or what if I can't pay it back, or what if I can't afford it in the first afford it in the first place?
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of, but you're making this investment in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're going to be a pilot, you normally, really want it, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew, it's just an investment in myself, and it's going to pay off, in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily now, because even before I was a student,
Yeah.
now all these regionals have bonus programs,
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to give you X amount of money once you've been there for an X amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
which you can use to pay off if you got financing,
Mm-hmm.
pay off that loan.
Mm-hmm.
And the other good part is all these airlines now, we just got brand new contracts with these really big pay raises.
Yeah.
So within
Nice.
the first couple years out of flight school, you can be making a pretty decent amount of money to pay off those loans if that's what you did, as
Yeah.
quickly as you can. I mean, all the data is out there online. If you can
Yeah, I was
see
just
the
looking
pay,
some of it up.
yeah, you can see the pay scales, and like I said, it's an investment in yourself,
Uh-huh.
and it's really going to pay off in the end. It might be kind of scary at first,
Yeah, absolutely.
but you'll reap the dividends of
Mhm.
it fast.
Yeah.
Obviously, like with any loan, right, you want to pay that off as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of programs at the regionals, and then when you make it to the legacy airlines too, that
Mhm.
you'll be able to pay those loans off quickly. So
Yeah, it seems like it's probably a little less. I mean, I don't know, I'm speaking from an outside perspective here, but it seems like it's a little less concerning than if you were to go to a school
yeah.
and get, like, let's say you go to a 4-year university.
Hmm.
I mean, that seems like the norm to take a loan out for that.
Yeah.
I feel like if it's a norm to do that, then it's probably the norm. I
Yeah,
mean, it's
the
probably
way I
easier.
look at it, and the
Yeah.
way I kind of presented it to my parents, like
Mhm.
when we first started talking about this stuff, was like it was like going to grad school. Whether you're
Yeah.
going to get your MBA, or you're going to be a lawyer, or a doctor or something like that. It's the same kind of investment,
Yeah.
right? So this was my grad school, right? Like I
Yeah.
went I went to college and did that, and then
Yeah.
I just went to flight school for like a year
Yeah, for a little
after.
shorter.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
Well,
the way
maybe.
I looked at it. And yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, it was one of the best things I ever did.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. That's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it might be a little scary at first, but the airline industry right now is so much different than what it was,
Yeah.
10 years ago, even 5 years ago,
Yeah.
like with the projected growth, and people are still traveling a ton.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, they're gonna still need pilots. We still have all these orders of airplanes on,
Nice.
so they got to have somebody to fly them. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
it's definitely 100% worth it.
Okay, cool, cool.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's good to hear that from someone who went through our program. And
Yep.
I mean, I've even thought about it myself. I'm like, man, if I would have known about this when I was 18 or 20 or whatever,
Yeah.
25 even,
Yeah,
I
that's
would have been
even
like, whoa.
better,
Yeah.
because the younger, like I got into this, at 25.
Yeah.
If I was in at 18, right, my seniority would be that much better.
Right.
So
You did say that, and we're probably getting towards the end here soon.
sure.
But you did say that when you made that decision and you went home and you told your friend, like, hey, pretty sure I'm in a good place to go ahead and make this
Yeah.
happen. I've always wanted to do this. I have probably two questions there.
Hmm.
When did you really start to think that you wanted to become an airline pilot? And maybe it was when you were young. Maybe you always had this. But then the second question
Yeah.
is, so that I don't forget, will be like, what was it that made you finally feel like you were actually ready to do it?
So to answer your first question,
Hmm.
so when I was little,
Hmm.
I always loved airplanes, and I would listen to live ATC,
Hmm.
like the website.
Oh, really?
When I was a little kid, like I just thought it was so cool how airplanes and talk to the tower and all that stuff. So I was like fascinated
Yeah.
with it. So that kind of really sparked my interest in airplanes, and I just love the feeling of flying. And then to answer your second question,
Hmm.
when I was living in SoCal with my buddy, so
Hmm.
I was selling these little airplanes called the Icon A5. So
Okay.
I'd get a little, taste of flying
Oh.
that, and
Did
that
you did
kind.
you have your private by then?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I had my private
Uh-huh.
out there, and then so I do a little bit of flying,
Hmm.
and then I was like, you know what, like this is what I'm meant to do is actually fly the airplane all the time. Like I still like doing the sales aspect of things, but yeah, just flying all the time. That's what really kind of was like the
Okay.
aha moment. I'm
Okay.
like, yeah, I gotta do this. The stars are aligning.
Yeah.
I knew a little bit about thrust flight through a colleague of mine, and that's
Hmm.
when it all kind of
I
aligned.
just
And
worked
I'm
out. You
like,
said I'm gonna
yep,
pull the
yep.
trigger here.
Called Nathan, talked to Nathan, and then
Yeah.
set the hook. I was
That's really
good.
cool, man.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really cool. It makes me just think to myself because, like, I didn't know if when you said that, I didn't know if you were like waiting on something or if you had another ambition or if you were like, oh, I'll wait until a certain point in your life. But
No.
it's really just when it made sense. You're like, why am I not
Yeah,
doing
you
this? Do you
gotta
wish you did
just.
it earlier?
Yeah, I wish I did it earlier. I
Oh,
mean,
can't
like
really.
I said, I wouldn't trade my college
Mm-hmm.
experience for anything. I mean, I had a great time at Icon, met some awesome people
Yeah.
there, but it's kind of like you just got to go with your gut.
Okay.
Like there was something inside me telling me, hey, I got to do this. And
Yeah.
then I called my parents and I was like, hey, I'm really serious about doing this. I think this is a really good
Mm.
opportunity. And I was doing my research, and then yeah, I came back from work one day and I'm like, I'm out of here in a
Yeah, I'm
week.
going in a week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
He's like,
whatever it
bro, what are you
was.
doing? You're just gonna leave me here?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Packed up my car, and then I drove from Santa Monica to here,
and
and
you
then
moved
lived
into
right
the
down the street.
in our
Yeah.
student housing, right?
Yep, yep.
Oh
I
man, you
live
had the whole
there.
experience. That's
Oh
pretty cool.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny because everyone's gut seems to kick in probably when they start flying a little bit, or when they come for
Yep.
a discovery flight. They're like their gut's like, oh, do this.
Right.
That's what it seems
Yep.
like. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
like when man.
yeah,
I'm a big believer of that.
yeah.
So
Well, congratulations so
yeah.
far. I know you're reaching your
Thanks.
1 year. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna continue moving on, however you move on.
Yep. Yep.
So I'm excited to hear
Yeah.
more
One
about that.
year. Let's see. I got 35 left to go. So
Yeah, 35.
yeah, a
Yeah,
long time.
sounds
But
like a good plan to me.
yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to say thanks, man, for coming
Yeah,
through and
absolutely.
joining
Anytime. This
in.
is really cool.
Yeah,
I'm a big podcast person. I listen
yeah,
to a lot of them. I've never actually been on one.
yeah. Well, welcome.
So it's kind of cool. I can see why, everybody has a podcast
It's
now.
kind of fun. You get to sit
Yeah,
down. I'm a
yeah.
yapper, so it's good to sit down and
Yeah,
talk.
no, it's really, really cool. And, I love coming back to Thrust and,
Yeah,
hanging out with you guys. And, it's just amazing
yeah,
how much this place has grown since even I was a student here.
yeah.
Like you have all brand new airplane. Like I know the airplanes when I was a student here are not even here anymore.
Yeah,
So
you were doing sports cruisers probably, right?
yeah, we had the
Still?
sport cruiser and then a bunch of 172 stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, even the Seminole. I got my multi unit's gone now too. So
Yeah.
it's like they have awesome brand new airplanes that are really
Mm-hmm.
nice with the air conditioning, and they they perfectly set up for the next transition into a
Yep.
bigger airplane. And if you can fly one of those Archers, you can fly any
Yeah,
airplane.
now we even have the G1000 avionics and stuff in
Oh
there. Yeah,
yeah,
so
it's
that's
awesome.
I heard that's pretty
Yeah.
mind blowing. I don't know anything about it,
Yeah, no, they're
but
really nice. I got to fly one a couple of months ago for the first time, and
really,
so it was really cool.
that sounds really nice. Oh yeah, you jumped into something smaller for how long was it before that? Since
Oh,
you,
maybe like 2 months or
oh
whatever.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, cool.
I really still like GA flying a lot. It's so
Yeah,
much different than my everyday job, so
that's
it's
cool.
fun.
I didn't
But
I didn't know if people will kind of step back into some of the
oh
smaller planes
no,
and
no,
stuff. So
I love it.
yeah.
I think it's so fun.
Yeah, cool. Well,
Yeah,
again, thanks for joining us I think this was the 27th episode of Pilots Say
sweet.
What, where we
Yeah,
hear what pilots have to say, and
yeah,
you really got
absolutely.
to give us a lot of insight.
Sweet. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Thank you so
yeah.
much for having me. This was really cool.
Actually, okay, cool. Well, if you guys enjoyed this, if you're still listening, you enjoyed this episode, I mean, again, leave questions in the comments, hit the like button, subscribe, do all that stuff because it really helps out the channel and it really allows us to get more pilots in here. And yeah, otherwise, if you're on any of the streaming platforms, those ratings really help us on those as well. Either way, we'll see y'all next week. We'll be having some more really fun guests, so stay tuned.